You are a supervillain who's in love with a superhero. One day, you heard how a different villain had fought your hero and left them to slowly die in the battlefield. The second you hear this, you went out to try and find the hero you loved, and save them from their imminent demise. The doctor was deep into his latest research when his assistant hurriedly told him to turn on the news. Grumbling at being interrupted, the doctor turned on his radio and heard the news that Reaper Man had just beaten the Dazzling Sparrow in an intense battle and was now attacking Hot Orange City. The news reporter was desperately pleading for any other superhero to come save the city. For a moment, the doctor was shocked. Dazzling Sparrow was defeated? Then his shock turned to anger. Reaper Man hurt Dazzling Sparrow? He slammed the alarm button and screamed at his assistant to prepare the Death Glider for immediate departure. His assistant, assuming he would attack the city, ran around, arming the Death Glider, fueling it and started up the engines. 15 minutes later, the Death Glider skimmed across the tops of the trees as the doctor pushed it to its limits. Soon he was recklessly weaving among the city buildings, looking for Dazzling Sparrow. He cursed himself for not keeping better track of Dazzling Sparrow, since Reaper Man had announced his plan to attack the city 2 weeks ago, at the monthly villain gathering. The path of destruction was pretty easy to follow and he soon had sight of where Dazzling Sparrow lay, propped up against a demolished building and surrounded by concerned civilians. Civilians that mostly ran away in a panic as the Death Glider approached and landed. As he rushed out, a small crowd confronted him, armed with makeshift weapons. Don't you take another step, Dr. Death. We won't let you harm Dazzling Sparrow. A brick was thrown his way, he caught it easily and crushed it with his hand. You foolish people dare stand in the way of Dr. Death, he bellowed. He saw several people in the back run away, the rest standing their ground, albeit shaking and terrified. I can't waste my time on you. And tossed one of his infamous death gas grenades among them. Within seconds the crowd was gasping on the ground, clutching their throats. The doctor walked through the gasping and choking crowd, approaching Dazzling Sparrow. His heart jumped when he saw her move. Oh, thank God, he thought she's still alive. He knelt down and inspected her. Her uniform was torn, she was badly bruised and bleeding profusely from several wounds. He started treating her right away, using his wound sealer to stop the bleeding. As he worked, she suddenly grabbed his arm. It's okay, he said softly, I'm here to help you, relax, okay? She slowly opened her eyes, saw him and relaxed. Hey, Dr. Death, she painstakingly said, kinda doing the opposite here. She tried to laugh, but grimaced in pain. Dr. Death kept treating her, examining her injuries and injecting some painkillers to ease her pain. Look, I'll help you, okay? I'm not your enemy today. Despite her injuries, Dazzling Sparrow pulled Dr. Death closer. You haven't been my enemy for some time, haven't you, Dr. Death?
Dr. Death made a makeshift splint on her broken leg. I don't know what you mean, Dazzling Sparrow, I just don't want Reaper Man to take the credit for beating you, that's all.
Dazzling Sparrow looked him in the eyes. You haven't been my enemy in at least 3 years, Dr. Death, you think I didn't notice? She smiled a little. You think I didn't notice you grand scheme started targeting corrupt politicians and millionaires? Or that it was you that accidentally left all that evidence that proved Axiom Chemicals was poisoning their workers? Or that your dreaded death gas somehow just renders people unconscious now? Dr. Death quietly kept treating her injuries. That's all just a coincidence, he mumbled. John, I know it's not, she said softly. Dr. Death was shocked. How did you know? I wear a full head helmet and use a voice changer. Dazzling Sparrow smiled. The third date, John, when you kept talking about how awesome it was that Dazzling Sparrow stopped Dr. Death from stealing that top secret research from MedTech. Top secret, John, so how would a small-time, local businessman know about it? So you knew, Alice? But just kept dating me the last year and a half? Alice nodded. Yeah, you were a fun guy, John, very considerate and kind. Having finished treating her immediate injuries, John sat down. So, now what? Shall I wait here for the police? Alice cocked her head to the side. Then how will my boyfriend visit me in the hospital after my terrible car accident? And you told me you had tickets for that new show next month. She smiled. Would be a shame to have them go to waste, you know. John nodded and Dr. Death stood up. You are saved for now, Dazzling Sparrow. He loudly proclaimed. No one beats my nemesis, except me. Turning around, he walked back to the Death Glider at a menacing pace. And I'll make sure to teach Reaper Man that lesson.